There is a special kind of silence that only exists in the wake of a scream. It's not peaceful. It's a vacuum, a held breath, a collective pause where the world stops spinning to stare at the source of the rupture. I learned that on a perfect, golden Saturday afternoon, in the middle of my parents' manicured garden, surrounded by 200 guests who thought they were there for a birthday party. The string quartet was playing something light and classical. Champagne flutes clinked. The air smelled of hydrangeas and expensive perfume. And my sister, Alara, was the picture of grace, moving through the crowd in a flowing white dress, a crown of baby's breath in her perfectly styled hair. It was her day, her 20th birthday. Everything was, as always, about Alara. I was playing my part, the reliable, quiet older sister. I was carrying a tray of canapés, smiling politely, feeling the familiar, comforting invisibility that came with being in her orbit. And then I saw him. My Leo. He was standing by the old oak tree, talking with my father. He looked devastatingly handsome in a simple linen shirt, his dark hair slightly messy, his smile easy and genuine. Our eyes met across the lawn, and for a fraction of a second, the carefully constructed wall I kept between us in public slipped. I allowed myself a tiny, private smile. His eyes crinkled at the corners in response. A secret passed between us, a thread of understanding that felt more real than anything else in that suffocatingly perfect scene. It was that look that did it. Alara saw it. I saw her expression change. The gracious hostess mask slipped, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. Her eyes darted from Leo's smiling face to mine, and her own smile tightened into a razor-thin line. She excused herself from a group of friends and started walking toward me, her movements stiff, her gaze fixed. A cold dread trickled down my spine. This was it. The facade was cracking. She stopped inches from me. The music seemed to fade away. "Is there something going on between you and Leo?" she asked, her voice a low, venomous whisper meant only for my ears. The tray in my hands felt suddenly heavy. I could lie. I could smooth it over. Tell her she was imagining things, preserve the peace for just a little longer. It's what I had done my entire life. But I was tired. Tired of the lies, tired of the secrets, tired of pretending the man I loved belonged to anyone but me. I took a shallow breath. Alara. I didn't get to finish. My hesitation was all the confirmation she needed. Her face, so beautiful and composed moments before, twisted into something ugly and raw. "You," she hissed, her voice rising. The people nearest to us stopped their conversations, sensing the shift in the air. "You did this. You couldn't stand it, could you? You couldn't stand that for once. I had something you wanted. Something you could never have." "That's not true," I said, my own voice barely a whisper, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. "It's always been true," she shrieked, and this time, her voice carried. The string quartet faltered and stopped. Every single head turned. 200 pairs of eyes locked onto us. The vacuum of silence descended. "You've always been jealous. Jealous of my friends, my job, my life. But this? You went after him." Tears, perfect and crystalline, began to stream down her cheeks. They were masterful tears, the kind she'd practiced since we were children to get her way. A collective murmur of sympathy rippled through the crowd. I saw my mother's hand fly to her mouth. My father's brow furrowed in confusion and concern. "Alara, please not here," I pleaded, my face burning with a mixture of shame and fury. "Why not here?" she cried, throwing her arms out, a tragic figure in white. "Let everyone see what you are. You took him from me. You saw how happy we were and you just couldn't help yourself. You had to sink your claws into him. You had to poison him against me." Each word was a bullet, designed for maximum damage. She was painting a masterpiece of victimhood, and I was the monstrous villain. The guests were eating it up. I could feel their judgment, their pity for her, their disgust for me. I stood frozen, my feet rooted to the spot, the tray of forgotten canapés shaking in my hands. I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell them all the truth. that nothing was as it seemed, that the story they were so eagerly believing was a complete and utter fiction, carefully constructed by my sister. But I didn't. I just stood there, silent, taking it. Because the truth was a weapon too powerful to wield in anger. It wouldn't just wound Alara. It would detonate our entire family. Leo started moving toward us, his face a mask of concern, but my father put a hand on his arm, holding him back. This was a family matter. Alara sobbed, a dramatic, heart-wrenching sound. He was mine. We were in love. And you stole him. Her tears fell onto the grass. Everyone stared. The room, the entire garden, was frozen in a tableau of my humiliation. But inside, beneath the paralyzing fear and the white-hot embarrassment, a cold, hard certainty settled in my gut. I knew the truth. A truth so different from the narrative she was spinning for her audience. He never belonged to her. Not in the way that mattered. Not in his heart. From the very start, he had chosen me. And in that moment, surrounded by the accusing stares of 200 people, with my sister's tears painting me a villain, that knowledge had to be enough. It was my anchor. It was the only thing keeping me from shattering into a million pieces. To understand the explosion in the garden, you have to understand the lie that preceded it. You have to understand Alara. My sister isn't just charismatic, she's a force of nature. She collects people, experiences, and accolades like others collect stamps. She is the sun, and our family has always been content to be planets in her orbit, basking in her reflected light. I was the largest, closest planet, forever tidally locked, one side always facing her brilliance, the other frozen in perpetual shadow. I didn't mind most of the time. It was easier. Being Alara's sister meant I had a defined role. The responsible one. The steady one. The one who remembered birthdays, drove her home from parties, and listened to her dramas. I was the moon to her sun, visible only because of her light. Then she brought Leo home. It was at a family dinner 6 months ago. She'd swept in, glowing, clutching the arm of the most genuinely beautiful man I had ever seen. It wasn't just his looks. It was a quiet confidence, a warmth that seemed to emanate from him. "Everyone, this is Leo," she'd announced, as if presenting a prize she'd won.
Leo.
He shook my father's hand, complimented my mother's cooking, and when he turned to me, he didn't just give me a perfunctory smile. He looked at me. Really looked. His eyes were the color of dark honey, and they held a flicker of curiosity I wasn't used to. "You must be Isla," he said, and my name on his lips sounded like a melody. "Alara's told me so much about you." I'd braced myself for the usual description. My boring older sister, the librarian, the reliable one. "All good things, I hope," I'd mumbled, suddenly feeling intensely plain in my simple sweater and jeans. "The smart one," he said, his smile deepening. "She said I'd like you." Our eyes held for a second too long. Alara, sensing the shift, looped her arm possessively through his and pulled him away to meet an aunt. The moment was broken, but the echo of it remained. That's how it began. Leo became a constant presence. He was at family brunches, Sunday dinners, movie nights. On the surface, he was Alara's perfect boyfriend. He was charming, successful, and he looked at her with what everyone perceived as adoration. But I started to notice things. The way his smile would become just a little too fixed when she'd tell a story that exaggerated his affection for her. The way he'd sometimes fall silent when she dominated the conversation. The way his eyes would often find me across the room, not with romantic interest, but with a look of shared bewilderment. The first real crack appeared one evening when Alara was running late. Leo and I were alone in the living room, an uncomfortable silence hanging between us. "She's something else, isn't she?" he said finally, gesturing vaguely at the room, at the world Alara commanded. "She's Alara," I said, a standard, non-committal family response. He laughed, a soft, genuine sound. "That's a diplomatic answer." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Can I tell you a secret? Sometimes I feel like I'm an actor in a play called Alara's Perfect Life, and I didn't fully read the script." My head snapped up. No one ever admitted that. Ever. To do so was to commit familial treason. I met his gaze, and the understanding that passed between us was electric. It was the first thread of a secret alliance. "The director is very demanding," I said carefully. He grinned. "And the lead actress never breaks character." After that, we found moments. A few words in the kitchen while I cleaned up and Ilara scrolled through her phone. A shared eye roll during one of her more outlandish stories. It was innocent. It was friendship. But it was also a lifeline for both of us. We were the only two people who saw the behind-the-scenes chaos of the production. The real turning point was the night of the company gala. Ilara had insisted Leo take her, a perfect opportunity to show him off. She'd spent a fortune on a new dress. An hour before they were due to leave, she called me, hysterical. "Isla, it's a disaster. I have the worst food poisoning of my life. I can't go. You have to go with him."
"What?"
"Ilara, no, I can't. That's his work event." "You have to," she wailed. "The tickets are non-refundable. It would look so bad if he didn't show. Please, Isla."
"For me."
"Just go as his +1, make an appearance and leave. No one will even notice it's you and not me."
It was a ridiculous request.
But saying no to Ilara in full meltdown mode was like trying to stop a hurricane. I reluctantly agreed. I met Leo at his apartment. He opened the door, looking handsome in his tuxedo, and his eyes widened in surprise when he saw me in my simple black dress, a world away from Ilara's planned glamour. "She drafted you, huh?" he said, a wry smile on his face.
"She's indisposed," I said.
He shook his head.
"She's not sick.
She's angry. We had a fight this afternoon. She wanted me to introduce her to my CEO as my fiancé. I said it was too soon. This is her version of punishment." The blunt truth of it shocked me. I had always known Ilara could be manipulative, but this was so calculated, so cold. The gala was a revelation. Without Ilara's dominating presence, Leo was different. Relaxed. Funny. We didn't make a brief appearance. We stayed for hours. We talked about everything: books, dreams, our favorite obscure movies, our mutual dislike of small talk. We danced. And when his hand settled on the small of my back, it didn't feel like a friendly gesture. It felt like a claim. Driving me home, the car was filled with a charged silence. He walked me to my door. "Isla," he said, his voice serious. "Tonight, this wasn't what I expected." "I'm sorry it was a disappointing substitute," I said, looking down at my keys. He gently tilted my chin up. "It was the exact opposite. Tonight was real. Everything with Ilara, it's a performance. I think I'm just a prop to her. A handsome, successful prop." My heart was pounding. "Then why are you with her?" "I don't think I am," he whispered. "Not anymore."
He didn't kiss me. Not then. But he might as well have.
The line had been crossed. We both knew it. The next day, Ilara was recovered. She never asked about the gala. She never thanked me. She simply collected Leo back into her narrative, telling everyone how awful she'd felt to miss it, but how wonderful he'd been to go alone and represent them so well. She erased me from the story completely. But you can't unfeel what has been felt. You can't unsee a connection that has been made. Leo and I started talking in secret. Texts that started as logistical lies to cover for us turned into all-night conversations. We met for coffee, then for walks. We were falling in love in the stolen spaces between Ilara's scenes, and the guilt was a lead weight in my stomach, even as my heart soared. He tried to break up with her.
Twice.
Both times, she'd erupted into such epic, suicidal hysterics that he'd backed down, terrified of what she might do. She'd love-bomb him, promise to change, and pull him back into the glittering web of her illusion. He was trapped by his own decency, by the terrifying specter of her volatility. We were trapped. So we waited for a solution that never came. Until she saw that look in the garden. She saw the truth she had been desperately trying to keep buried. And she decided to weaponize her victimhood before we could ever speak our truth. The silence in the garden was broken by my mother's frantic whispers. "Ilara, darling, come inside. Let's talk about this inside." She tried to put an arm around my sobbing sister, but Alara shook her off, her performance reaching its crescendo.
No.
I want everyone to know what she's done. I want them to see her. Leo finally shook off my father's grip and strode toward us. His face was pale, his jaw set. He looked at Alara, not with love or concern, but with a weary, final anger. Then his eyes found mine, and in them, I saw an apology and a resolve that steadied my shaking hands. Alara, that's enough, he said, his voice low but cutting through her sobs. She turned on him, her tears instantly shifting to fury. You too? She's poisoned you completely. You're choosing her? After everything I've done for you? After everything we had? What did we have, Alara? Leo asked, his voice dangerously calm. Tell me, what did we actually have? She blinked, thrown by the question. We had love. We had a future. We were going to get engaged. A gasp went through the crowd. My father looked stunned. My mother looked hopeful. This was the narrative they wanted. Is that what you told them? Leo asked, a sad smile touching his lips. He addressed the crowd now, his voice rising so everyone could hear. Is that the story? That we were in love? That we were planning a future? He paused, letting the question hang in the air. Alara's confidence wavered. Leo, don't, she whispered, a real fear entering her eyes for the first time. The truth, Leo said, looking directly at my parents, then scanning the faces of their friends, is that I tried to break up with Alara over 2 months ago. Another, louder gasp. My mother's hand flew to her chest again. What? My father boomed. What is he talking about, Alara? He's lying, she shrieked, but the note of panic was unmistakable. He's lying to protect her. Why would I need to lie? Leo continued, his tone measured, factual. The truth is simple. Alara and I are not compatible. We haven't been for a long time. I told her this. Her response was to threaten to take a whole bottle of pills if I left. The crowd was utterly silent now, hanging on his every word. This was better than any soap opera. The second time I tried, Leo went on. She showed up at my office and created such a scene that security had to be called. She told my colleagues I was cheating on her with a subordinate. She was going to destroy my career if I didn't stay with her. I watched the faces of the guests change. The pity for Alara was shifting, morphing into shock and dawning horror. They were seeing the cracks in the perfect porcelain doll. This is slander, my father shouted, but he sounded less sure now. It's not, a quiet voice said.
Mine.
I didn't recognize it at first. It was clear, strong, and it carried across the lawn. Everyone turned to me. The villain was speaking. It's the truth, Dad.
And you know it.
You've always known what she's like. You just never wanted to admit it. I looked at my sister, her face pale and furious. He never belonged to you, Alara. You tried to own him. You tried to control him. But you can't control a person's heart. And you, she spat, turning her venom back on me. You swooped in like the vulture you are. You saw he was vulnerable, and you. I fell in love with him. I stated, plain and simple. The words felt like a release. And he fell in love with me. It happened. It wasn't planned. It wasn't malicious. It was real. Something you wouldn't recognize because you live your entire life behind a filter. The accusation hung in the air, brutal and undeniable. The night of the gala, I continued, addressing the crowd now, making sure they understood the full picture. Alara wasn't sick. She was punishing Leo for not proposing. She sent me in her place to humiliate him. But she was the one who humiliated herself. Because that night, we saw the real person behind the performance. And we chose each other. The garden was completely still. You could hear the leaves rustling in the trees. Leo walked over to me. He didn't touch me. He just stood by my side, a united front. I'm sorry it had to happen like this, he said to my parents. But I won't be blackmailed or manipulated anymore. And I won't let Isla be vilified for something that is not her fault. He looked at Alara, who is now standing silently, her tears dry, her face a mask of pure, undiluted hatred. It's over, Alara. For good this time. Whatever you try to do, I'm done. The illusion was shattered. The performance was over. The audience was staring at the exposed wires and the staged tricks, and they knew they'd been fooled. My father looked old. My mother was crying real tears now, of shame and confusion. The guests began to murmur amongst themselves, awkwardly looking away, starting to slowly disperse, desperate to escape the uncomfortable truth of our family's dysfunction. Alara stood alone in the center of the lawn, the crown of baby's breath crooked in her hair. She was utterly exposed. Her perfect birthday, her perfect life, lay in ruins at her feet, and it was all her own making. She looked at me, and her eyes promised a war that would never end. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Leo's hand found mine, his fingers lacing through my own. His grip was firm, sure. He chose me. In the middle of the wreckage, in the face of the scandal and the pain, he had stood by my side and told the truth. And as I stood there, holding the hand of the man I loved, watching my sister's perfect world crumble, I knew that was enough. It was more than enough. It was everything.